everybody, we are back with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Today we are going to read through just half of chapter 5. It's a long one and there's so many exciting things that happen that I want to split it up so that we get enough time to talk about all the fun stuff. So, first, quick review. We have been reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by JK Rowling. Harry Potter is a wizard, and he has a very interesting story. His family was killed by an evil wizard named Voldemort, or you know who. And Voldemort tried to kill him too, but he couldn't do it, and he disappeared, leaving Harry with just a scar, and sadly, his parents gone. So, Harry lives with his family, the Dursleys, his aunt and uncle and cousin. Now they're what we call muggles. They have no magic whatsoever, and they think all magic is bad or weird, and they want to keep Harry from that really cool world that he's a part of. So, we learn about how they are not nice to him, and about how something very particular happens at the zoo once, right? Then, these strange letters keep coming to the house for Harry. Well, Uncle Vernon refuses to let Harry see them, and hundreds of letters keep coming. Well, Uncle Vernon took them far away to a house on a hill in the middle of a lake, and there, a giant named Hagrid pounded the door down and made sure Harry got his letter, which is an acceptance letter to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Hagrid told Harry all about his family and about what happened and that he is a wizard. So now we are on to chapter 5 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Diagon Alley. Hope you enjoy! Chapter 5, Diagon Alley. Harry woke early the next morning. Although he could tell it was daylight, he kept his eyes shut tight. It was a dream, he told himself firmly. I dreamed a giant called Hagrid came to tell me I was going to a school for wizards. When I open my eyes, I'll be at home in my cupboard. There was suddenly a loud tapping noise. And there's Aunt Petunia knocking on the door, Harry thought, his heart sinking. But he still didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. Tap, tap, tap. All right, Harry mumbled. I'm getting up. He sat up, and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off of him. The hut was full of sunlight. The storm was over. Hagrid himself was asleep on the collapsed sofa, and there was an owl rapping its claw on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Harry scrambled to his feet, so happy he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open. The owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered on the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. Don't do that! Harry tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on savaging the coat. Hagrid, said Harry loudly, there's an owl! Pay him, Hagrid grunted into the sofa. What? He wants paying for delivering the paper. Look in the pockets. Hagrid's coat seemed to be made of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, mint handbugs, tea bags. Finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins. Give him 5 nuts, said Hagrid sleepily. Nuts? The little bronze ones. Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the owl held out its leg so he could put the money into the small leather pouch tied to it. Then it flew off through the open window. Hagrid yawned loudly, sat up, and stretched. Best be off, Harry. Lots to do today. Gotta get up to London and buy all your stuff for school. Harry was turning over the wizard coins and looking at them. He had just thought of something which made him feel as though the happy balloon inside him had got a puncture. Hagrid? said Hagrid, who was pulling on his huge boots. "I haven't got any money. And you heard Uncle Vernon last night. He won't pay for me to go to learn magic."
"Don't worry about that," said Hagrid, standing up and scratching his head. "Do you think your parents would leave you with anything?"
"But if their house was destroyed?"
"They didn't keep their gold in the house, boy. Nah, first stop for us is Gringotts, Wizard's Bank. Have a sausage. They're not bad cold, and I wouldn't say no to a bit of your birthday cake neither."
"Wizards have banks?"
"Just the one, Gringotts, run by goblins."
Harry dropped the bit of sausage he was holding. "Goblins?"
"Yeah, so you'd be mad to try to rob it, I'll tell you that. Never mess with goblins, Harry. Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything you want to keep safe. Except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I gotta visit Gringotts anyway, for Dumbledore. Hogwarts business."
Hagrid drew himself up proudly.
"He usually gets me to do important stuff for him. Fetching you, getting things from Gringotts. Knows he can trust me, see? Got everything? Come on, then."
Harry followed Hagrid out onto the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunlight. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, with a lot of water in the bottom after the storm. "How did you get here?" Harry asked, looking around for another boat.
"Flew,"
said Hagrid. "Flew?"
"Yeah, but we'll go back on this. Not supposed to use magic now I've got you."
They settled down in the boat, Harry still staring at Hagrid, trying to imagine him flying.
"Seems a shame to row, though," said Hagrid, giving Harry another of his sideways looks. "If I was to speed things up a bit, would you mind not mentioning that at Hogwarts?"
"Of course not," said Harry, eager to see more magic. Hagrid pulled out the pink umbrella again, tapped it twice on the side of the boat, and they sped off towards land. "Why would you be mad to try and rob Gringotts?" Harry asked.
"Spells, enchantments," said Hagrid, unfolding his newspaper as he spoke. "They say there's dragons guarding the high security vaults. And then you got to find your way. Gringotts is hundreds of miles under London, see? Deep under the underground. You'd die of hunger trying to get out, even if you did manage to get your hands on summit."
Harry sat and thought about this while Hagrid read his newspaper, The Daily Prophet. Harry had learned from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone while they did this, but it was very difficult. He'd never had so many questions in his life.
"Ministry o' Magic messing things up as usual," Hagrid muttered, turning the page.
"There's a Ministry of Magic?" Harry asked before he could stop himself.
"Course," said Hagrid. "They wanted Dumbledore for minister, of course, but he'd never leave Hogwarts. So old Cornelius Fudge got the job. Bungler if you ever was one. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning asking for advice."
"But what does a Ministry of Magic do?"
"Well, their main job is to keep it from the muggles that there's still witches and wizards up and down the country."
"Why?"
"Why? Blimey, Harry, everybody'd be wanting magic solutions to their problems. Nah, we're best left alone."
At this moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbor wall. Hagrid folded up his newspaper, and they clambered up the stone steps to the street. Passers-by stared a lot at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as anyone else, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things, like parking meters, and saying loudly, "See that, Harry? Things these muggles dreamt up, eh?" "Hagrid," said Harry, panting a bit as he ran to keep up, "did you say there were dragons at Gringotts?"
"Well, so they say," said Hagrid. "Crikey, I'd like a dragon."
"You'd like one?"
Wanted one ever since I was a kid. Here we go."
They had reached the station. There was a train to London in 5 minutes' time. Hagrid, who didn't understand Muggle money, as he called it, gave the notes to Harry so he could buy their tickets. People stared more than ever on the train. Hagrid took up 2 seats and sat knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent.
"Still got your letter, Harry?"
he asked as he counted his stitches. Harry took the parchment envelope out of his pocket.
"Good," said Hagrid. "There's a list there of everything you need."
Harry unfolded the second piece of paper he hadn't noticed the night before and read, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First-year students will require 1. 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 2. 1 plain pointed hat, black, for day wear. 3. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar. 4. 1 winter cloak, black, silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Set books. All students should have a copy of each of the following: The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, by Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic, by Bathilda Bagshot. Magical Theory, by Aldebert Waffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, by Emmerich Switch. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi, by Philida Spore. Magical Draughts and Potions, by Arsenis Jigger. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, by Newt Scamander. The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection, by Quentin Tribble. Other equipment: 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter standard size 2, 1 set glass or crystal phials, 1 telescope, 1 set brass scales. Students may also bring an owl, or a cat, or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. "Can we buy all this in London?" Harry wondered aloud.
"If you know where to go," said Hagrid.
Harry had never been to London before, although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going. He was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck in the ticket barrier on the Underground, and complained loudly that the seats were too small and the trains too slow.
"I don't know how the Muggles manage without magic," he said, as they climbed a broken-down escalator which led up to a bustling road lined with shops.
Hagrid was so huge that he parted the crowd easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him. They passed bookshops and music stores, hamburger bars and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if you could sell you a magic wand. This was just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizard gold buried miles beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spell books and broomsticks? Might this not all be some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursleys had no sense of humor, he might have thought so. Yet, somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him so far was unbelievable, Harry couldn't help trusting him.
"That's it,"
said Hagrid, coming to a halt.
"The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place."
It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have noticed it was there. The people hurrying by didn't glance at it. Their eyes slid from the big bookshop on one side to the record shop on the other, as if they couldn't see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most particular feeling that only he and Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was very dark and shabby. A few old women were sitting in the corner, drinking tiny glasses of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was talking to the old barman, who was quite bald and looked like a gummy walnut. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. They waved and smiled at him, and the barman reached for a glass, saying, "The usual Hagrid."
"Cat, Tom. I'm on Hogwarts business, said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder and making Harry's knees buckle.
Good Lord, said the barman, peering at Harry. Can this be? The leaky cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. Bless my soul, whispered the old barman. Harry Potter, what an honour! He hurried out from behind the bar, rushed towards Harry, and seized his hand, tears in his eyes. Welcome back, Mr. Potter, welcome back. Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with the pipe was puffing on it without realizing it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. Then there was a great scraping of chairs, and next moment Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the leaky cauldron. Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter. Can't believe I'm meeting you at last. So proud, Mr. Potter. I'm just so proud. Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all aflutter. Delighted, Mr. Potter. Just can't tell you. Diggle's the name. Dedalius Diggle. I've seen you before, said Harry, as Dedalius Diggle's top hat fell off his excitement. You bowed at me once in a shop. He remembers, cried Diggle, looking around at everyone. Did you hear that? He remembers me. Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for more. A pale young man made his way forward, very nervously. One of his eyes was twitching. Professor Quirrell, said Hagrid. Harry, Professor Quirrell will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts. Potter, stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you. What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell? Harry asked. Defense against the dark arts, stammered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not think about it. Not that you need it, Potter? He laughed nervously. You'll be getting all of your equipment, I suppose. I've got to pick up a new book on vampires myself. He looked terrified at the very thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It took almost 10 minutes to get away from them at all. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the rabble. Must get on, lots to buy. Come on, Harry. Doris Crockford shook Harry's hand one last time, and Hagrid led them through the bar and out into a small walled courtyard, where there was nothing but dustbins and a few weeds. Hagrid grinned at Harry. Told you, didn't I? Told you was famous. Even Professor Quirrell was trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's usually trembling. Is he always that nervous? Oh, yeah. Poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He has a fine while he was studying out of books, but then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met vampires in the Black Forest, and there was a nasty bit of trouble with a hag. Never been the same since. Scared of the students, scared of his own subject. Now, where's me umbrella? Vampires? Hags? Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in the wall above the dustbin. 3 up, 2 across, he muttered. Right, stand back, Harry. He tapped the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick he had touched quivered. It wriggled. In the middle, a small hole appeared. It grew wider and wider. A second later, they were facing an archway large enough even for Hagrid. An archway onto a cobbled street, which twisted and turned out of sight. Welcome, he said Hagrid, to Diagon Alley. He grinned at Harry's amazement. They stepped through the archway. Harry looked quickly over his shoulder and saw the archway shrink instantly back into a solid wall. The sun shone brightly on a stack of cauldrons outside the nearest shop. Cauldrons, all sizes, copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring, collapsible, said a sign hanging over them. Yeah, you'll be needing one, said Hagrid, but we gotta get your money first. Harry wished he had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside an apothecary's was shaking her head as they passed, saying, "Dragon liver, 16 shekels an ounce, they're mad." A low, soft hooting came from a dark shop with a sign saying, "Elop's Owl Emporium, Tawny, Screech, Barn, Brown, and Snowy." Several boys about Harry's age had their noses pressed against a window with broomsticks in it. "Look," Harry heard one of them say, "the new Nimbus 2000, fastest ever." There were shops selling robes, shops selling telescopes, and strange silver instruments Harry had never seen before. Windows stacked with barrels of bats' spleens and eels' eyes, tottering piles of spell books, quills and rolls of parchment, potion bottles, globes of the moon. "Gringotts," said Hagrid. That is where we are going to end our chapter 4 now. We'll finish up the next half of chapter 5 in our next video. But right now, I would like to discuss what we learned about so far in chapter 5, Diagon Alley. Our first question is, why does Hagrid take Harry to Diagon Alley? He has to go school shopping, of course. Wasn't that the best part of going back to school in the fall? Going and getting a new backpack or some new crayons and things, new pen set. Well, Harry gets to get some much more interesting things like spell books and a cauldron and a magic wand. How do Hagrid and Harry get there? They're not in London at first, are they? So London is in England, and it's a big city. They have to take a train to get there, right? They got some pretty funny looks on the train, didn't they? Hagrid's a pretty big guy. And I think it would be even more odd to hear a big guy talking about how things like telephone poles and stuff are brilliant inventions. What happens inside of the leaky cauldron? So, first, Harry and Hagrid seem to be the only two people on the street who can see the leaky cauldron, right? And so when they go in, it's kind of dark and dusty, and few people know who Hagrid is, right? But then all of the people know who Harry Potter is. They talk to him, they say thank you, they want to greet him and shake his hand. One lady came back for 100 different handshakes, didn't she? What are some of the things that Harry sees in the shop windows? He sees lots of things, doesn't he? So there are lots. I want to look at these pictures one more time. So first, here is the leaky cauldron. Has literally a cauldron with a leak. And then Diagon Alley. So a little closer look here at the picture. There's lots and lots of different shops. So some of the things he saw were cauldrons of all sizes, different instruments that he didn't even know what they did, animals, things for spells. Here's the other page. He also saw broomsticks, didn't he? Pretty cool. All right, so our chapter title was Diagon Alley. Why was it called that? That was where they were going, wasn't it? So it was pretty important because that's where Harry gets kind of his first look at the wizarding world. We will be back next time with the rest of chapter 5 and learn all about the rest of Hagrid and Harry's shopping trip. Bye, everyone!